Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. So, today is Thursday, and we are going to be doing the earth signs. That's going to be Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn. Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn. Before we get started, I do have some news that I'd like to share. Hi, Rain. It's so good to see you. I don't know if you've ever come in to the chat on one of the live streams before. I'm really glad you're here. I have some big news, which is that I got a job. So I'm not going to lose all my money. So I will continue with the afternoon content and doing these live streams. Yeah, I'm so excited. But I'm probably going to hold off on the Friday videos just for a bit. Thank you. I'm gonna hold off on the Friday videos just for a bit until I get into my new work routine. Hi Maria, thank you for joining us today. It's so good to see you. So, because this is the Earth Signs Day, I'm going to be using the black natron, or the spellwork impregnated natron, and I do think I must have put some rosemary oil in here. Hi Kayla's lovely, it's really good to see you. And because one of my best friends actually showed up in the chat today, I remember that we're headed into Taurus season, so I want to wish a happy birthday to all the Taurus sun signs out there, and a happy birthday to those of you who have Aries sun sign placements. Yes, I think I must have put a little rosemary oil in here. Oh, happy birthday, Kayla's lovely. That's very soon. I actually know quite a few Tauruses who have birthdays at the end of April. Oh, of course, of course. So this is the deck of cards that I'm going to be using this week. These are plastic tarot cards, and they're very shiny. That was loud, sorry. So these are the plastic tarot cards reminds me of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. And then on the faces of the cards, it is the typical Rider-Waite-Smith deck. But you can see that there are like some little extra embossed details on the cards that make them kind of cool. So I've been enjoying using these. I also wanted to let you know that this is the crystal that I am using for the scrying over in the extended forecasts this week. It is a bloodstone. A bloodstone. And that is on the members only side of the channel. But of course, your presence here is appreciated in whatever form it takes. So let's start with the sign of Taurus. Not just because it's your birthday, but also because Taurus is second house, so it's pretty early in the spread. I'm kind of boring like that. I always just go in order. Oh. So Taurus, if you would like, just kind of allow any of your concerns and your intention for the reading, allow those things to rise up to the forefront of your thoughts, and just gently and patiently allow them to wait there, such that we can address them in the reading. Now, if you are a little bit stressed out, oh, good. If you're a little bit stressed out about what you came here for today, I invite you to gently breathe through those energies. As you inhale, imagine your body filling with the divine white light of Source. And then as you exhale, sigh out all of that tension, all of that stress. We have a very interesting spread for you today, Taurus. Let me write down your timestamp. So, Taurus, we have only one reversal in your reading this week, and it's in the future. I'm doing a 5-card spread, and then after we're done reading the cards, going in depth with that, I'm doing a guided meditation briefly to transmute those energies and kind of sand off any of the rough edges that might be left after the reading itself to help you kind of move through those energies. We also have something interesting here in which I'll just go ahead and tell you on the front end of the reading that we have the 2 of Cups and the 2 of Wands. And then in the future, we have the 3 of Cups and the 3 of Wands. And I assure you that I've shuffled these cards quite a bit. I've been using them all week, and so they should be quite thoroughly shuffled by now. It's a little bit dark in here. Sorry about that. What if I make it different colors today? Make it different colors. Yeah, that's kind of fun. So the first card for you today, Taurus, is in the past, and it is in the upright. We have the Magician. The Magician is a master manifester. We have all of these tools on the table. Hi, Alba. Thank you for coming. The wands, the swords, the chalices, and the pentacles, showing the magician's mastery over all of these different aspects. The four suits of the minor arcana also kind of align with the four different worlds of the Tree of Life in Kabbalah. And I won't go into that too much here. I may or may not ever do a more in-depth video about that. But we'll talk about that later. But it's mastery over not just the physical self and what is here in the material world, but mastery over bringing things from the ethereal plane down into the physical world. As such, the magician also has this lemniscate over their head. It's a rather non-binary presenting person. So neither wholly masculine or wholly feminine. And I would like to think that really all of the cards in the deck are like that. They could fit either gender, be more non-specific. But what we're looking at more so is active and passive energies. And even though the magician has mastery over all of these, the magician is associated with the element of air, the planet Mercury. So the magician is heavily aligned with the planet Mercury, and through Mercury, the element of air. And so for the magician to be manifesting in this very non-binary way also ties in the idea of Mercury themselves. We have the wand here. One could make that extra jump and think of it like the caduceus that Mercury carries, his baton. So with the magician in the upright in the past, I can see that you have been undergoing quite a bit of manifestation practice. This can be law of attraction. It can be ritual, especially things like money magic, manifesting a job, manifesting a love interest. All of those are possibilities here with the magician. And I can see that your work is successful at this time. So the next card that we have for you in past position is the Two of Cups. And here again, we have this caduceus, right? Very similar to the mercurial energies that we have with the magician. Now, the Two of Cups can be about romantic relationships. Again, we've got two very non-binary looking individuals on this card, exchanging these emotions through the exchange of these chalices. This card can also be about business partnerships. Remember, too, that when we're looking at a card like the Page of Cups, that cup can be an offering of all kinds of things. So, a lot of times people offer things to each other because of their feelings for that other person. This can be not just offerings of emotional support or romantic love, but can also extend to money, gifts, uh, opportunities, all kinds of things like that. So, what you might have been working on manifesting in the past, Taurus, and I see this continuing and coming to fruition from the past into the current situation. We'll start talking about that card in just a moment, I promise. But this Two of Cups, there's an alchemy to it as well. Again, we're taking things from the spiritual plane, from the ethereal plane, and bringing them down into the material plane and making them concrete. So that's what we're looking at with these two cards together. Now, I've talked a lot about air sign energy. We've talked a little bit about the cups and the emotional energy. And I have talked quite a bit about the wands as well. So the next card that I'm pulling out for you, Taurus, is the card of the significator. This is you in the current situation, in your current environment. And what we have there is the Two of Wands. Now, I want to show you something very interesting about this Two of Wands. Notice that we have very similar looking blossoms here on this card as we have here on this card. This could be lilies and roses. On this card, it looks a little bit more like bundles of berries. But we have the imagery of these white flowers and these red flowers or berries. And the contrast of the white and red is a consistent theme in a lot of different disciplines like alchemy. You see it a bit in geomancy as well, where the white is the pure and the red is the corrupt. So instead of looking at it like white and black magic, sometimes you look at it like the pure magic, the spiritual side of magic, and the red magic being more the carnal sides, the desire, the need that creates the working. So here we have reinforced the wand from the Magician card and reinforced the wand at the top of the Two of Cups. Doubly reinforced in this case because we're looking at the Two of Wands. This card is about planning. This person is holding a globe, so it can be about planning travel. It can be about planning trajectory. Another important aspect of manifestation and law of attraction work can be vision boarding. So this would be aligned with that technique of creating a vision board to help you visualize that success. And this person is looking out over this terrain. So the terrain itself, we're up on a very high vantage point. There's a little house down there. There's somewhat of a gully here. There's some mountains in the background. But one thing that I want you to notice about this terrain is that while there are some little patches here that look like they might be very difficult to traverse, most of this terrain looks like it could be easily traversed under reasonable circumstances. So the Two of Wands is not just about planning out this journey, but it's about being able to see that process beginning to end, understanding what obstacles might be in your way, and feeling like you have the equipment with which to deal with those things. So now let's move on to the future, Taurus. The future, the future, the future. And this is the one reversal in your reading, Taurus, which is the Three of Cups. A new friend group could be coming into your life. Inversely, sometimes the Three of Cups in the reverse can be about a betrayal of some kind within a close-knit friend group, or can be about people who don't have your best interest at heart. So the kind of betrayal I would be talking about here is not the same thing as what you see with the Seven of Swords, right? That's a very clear-cut betrayal. That person knows exactly what they're doing. More likely, if you feel betrayed by whatever this card represents, it is less about these people trying to take advantage, and more often there are substances involved, or that because this is more like a casual party atmosphere, when things get serious, that's when the chips really fall. And you're able to see clearly who is on your side and who isn't really that invested. So that's kind of what we see with the Three of Cups in reverse. We do have lots of plant life on this card. We've got grapes here in one of the person's hands. We've got this little pumpkin here in the corner. We have all of these delicious low-growing fruits. I'm not entirely sure what kind of fruits those might be because it looks like they're growing very close to the ground, and usually larger fruits like this grow up in trees. They look like they're about the size of apricots or something like that. Sometimes kumquats can grow on a low bush like that, but they don't get very big. So the trajectory of this event, and I'll bring the final card into it as I'm explaining, because the final card is the Three of Wands. So all of that planning that you have put into this, Taurus, the expedition has been sent out. The order has been placed. The work has been done. And the Three of Wands is those ships returning laden with the reward, whether that is money in exchange for cargo, cargo in exchange for money, or energies that you've put out, Taurus, being returned to you threefold. So a lot of wand energy showing up in this reading, even when we're looking at cards that are not necessarily in the suit of wands. And I bring this up because it's really going to be about how those energies return to you. As I said, when the chips are down, you're going to find out who your real friends are, who stays in touch, who's there for you when you need them. And this kind of is a departure from a friendlier, more casual atmosphere. So if you find yourself surrounded by a handful of people who are always kind of just around, you enjoy their company, but you don't necessarily feel super connected to them, that would be this kind of situation for sure. This can also be situations where you've invested a lot into the people around you, and you find out that some of them are just much more serious than others. But I don't think this is going to be the dissolution of an entire friend group, right? This is going to be really getting to the heart of this alchemical process that you're going through. It might even feel like a step back in some ways, whether that's socially speaking or whether you feel like your perceived status takes a hit, anything like that. It's just that you are finally getting back your manifestation energies in the form of results. You can see on this card all of the little ships in the water. And even in this day and age, shipping by sea is a very tricky proposition. It takes much longer than air freight, and it is much less predictable. Oftentimes, the ports get jammed up and things can't move for months. So, to have in your line of sight those ships returning to you on the horizon is something like a miracle, Taurus, and definitely worth celebrating. So now let's do the guided meditation part of your reading, Taurus. It looks like you have been working on a lot of manifestation energy, pushing very hard. So what we're going to do now, because this is the card in the current situation, we are going to clear any obstacles out of the way of your manifestation, Taurus. And we're going to pretend that we're clearing out underbrush in a dense, dense forest. So I'm going to allow you to choose your favorite instrument for clearing brush. Maybe some of you like a machete. Maybe some of you like using a sawzall or one of those little hand cutters that folds up. Maybe you like doing controlled burns. That's also an acceptable way to clear out the brush, especially if you have strong fire energy in your chart. But I will give you the caveat that you might want to check conditions before doing a controlled burn and make sure that you have plenty of water on hand. And maybe even some extra help. So we're coming up to the edge of this forested area. And you can see the first clearing ahead. And you start slowly proceeding towards it. And maybe you have to clear a lot of brush out of the way in order to get there. Maybe it's not very difficult to get there at all. Watch out for small creatures in the brush, like snakes especially. But even a coyote or a fox can be dangerous under the right circumstances. So you reach the first clearing, and you look back to see how far you've come. And much you have accomplished. So the way forward from here, you're going to have to use a compass in order to orient yourself in the right direction. And you will have to decide which direction you are headed. Are you going north, south, east, west? Think about the direction in which your eventual goal lies. Maybe you live north, just north of a big city, and you're trying to get a job there so you can move there. Maybe you have a long-distance romantic partner. Which direction do they live from you? That is the direction that we are going to proceed. So work your way a little bit further through this very dense brush in the forest. It's a little bit dark too because the trees are shutting out a lot of that light, the canopy of the trees. But you will be able to proceed and just gradually work your way through this forest. And finally, we reach the second clearing. And you turn around to see how far you've come, and you realize all the things that you've already overcome. And finally, we head through the densest, darkest part of the forest. That's the sound of the crunching leaves and branches under your feet. It's very thick now and almost completely dark. And you wonder if it might not just be easier to give up and come back the way you came. But you decide to proceed and move forward. And finally, Taurus, you come to the edge of a short cliff that you will easily be able to climb down. And you see here that your goal is right in front of you now. And all you have to do is take that final leap, and it's yours. Thank you, Maria. I'm glad that you are enjoying the reading. Thank you for coming. So that is going to conclude the Taurus reading for this week. Oh, thank you. I will be going after the tarot live stream over to the members side of the channel to do the crystal scrying. So if that interests you, you are cordially invited, but your presence is greatly appreciated, no matter what form it takes. So now we are going to move on to the sign of Virgo. And Virgo, if you would, just allow... Oh, it's my pleasure, Rain. Thank you for coming. It's good to see you. Virgo, just allow anything that you'd like to address, your intention for the reading. Go ahead and set your intention and allow all of that mental chatter to kind of condense and wait patiently at the forefront of your thoughts. And if there's anything that you find stressful about these things, just gently breathe through that tension. Inhale and draw in the divine white light of Source. And then as you exhale, just release any of that stress right back to Source, and it will be transmuted. Okay. Mm-hmm. Interesting. Very interesting indeed. I have to confess, I've been feeling kind of klutzy lately. Like I've kind of been dropping things and throwing things unintentionally. Virgo, you are showing up as the Hermit in reverse. You have one reversal in your reading, and it is your card, and it is in the future. So that's very interesting to behold in this reading for you, Virgo. Here in the past, we have the Four of Cups. And this card is in the upright. So that tells me that even though it's in the past, these are options that you are contemplating into the current situation. And when we get to the current situation, we'll see a little bit more about this as well. One of these options is ideal, but it might not have fully manifested at whatever point in the past you started this evaluation process. Sitting here, kind of waiting, kind of relaxing underneath this tree, I don't really get a sense of urgency here. You might have been waiting even on divine timing, which can be very frustrating because you're like, but I need to do something. I need to move my life forward. And especially some of the Virgo tendencies toward wanting to have a certain level of control over one's life, one's daily routines, one's health possibly, that you might not have felt like you had the resources available to take care of a lot of those things. But I do see that you did. Now, you might not have recognized these resources for what they were, but the Six of Pentacles, and especially in the upright, indicates that there are 3 pentacles here that are just for you. And there are 3 more pentacles that you are at liberty to spend in any way that you desire. We do have these scales here on the Six of Pentacles. It is a card not of equality necessarily, but there is a certain element of balance there. The Six of Pentacles is an indicator card of money flowing out being less than the money that's flowing in. So that might not be strictly the case. And of course, the Nine of Pentacles is greatly preferable to the Six of Pentacles. But even so, you're not in terrible shape with the Six of Pentacles. And you might even be in a position where you're able to apply for different forms of financial aid. So I certainly don't want any of you to feel like I'm saying, well, you should have just done those things, because that's not entirely what I'm saying at all. There still is that process that you have to go through, the evaluation. And maybe sometimes that's, am I going to pay my car payment or am I going to pay my credit card? And that's an uncomfortable place to be. But we don't have the Five of Pentacles anywhere in your reading. So it seems more like, Virgo, that you are in a position where you're determining now where you would like to put the resources that you do have access to. You're not really, obviously, there are aspects of wanting to grow those resources, but there's not a lot here about mobility. There's a lot more here about waiting. And in fact, when we come here to the place of the significator, we have two major arcana cards in your reading this week, Virgo. And one of them, as I mentioned, is the Hermit in the reverse in the future placement. In the current situation, we have the Hanged Man. And the Hanged Man is elemental water and is also associated with the planet Neptune. Now, Neptune is like the higher vibration of the moon's energy. So there's a lot there about communing with the higher power, especially using powers of intuition and more like your psychic senses to commune with that higher power. There's the potential there for transformative experience. But right now it's just a potential. And then when we get to 13 and the Death card, then we find that transformation. With the Hanged Man, there are aspects of self-sacrifice and possible penitence. And most importantly, it is a period of stasis and waiting. So, Virgo, I see that you've been doing a lot of waiting in this current situation. And in the recent past. That perhaps you feel like you've had a few options to explore. And right now you've explored those options and you're kind of just hanging out, waiting to see what's next. So in the future for you, Virgo, as I mentioned, we have the Hermit card showing up in the reverse. You may need to get out of your comfort zone, Virgo, in order to proceed forward. The Hermit is shining this beacon from afar, but is quite separate from the general populace. As far as the figures of the major arcana, I consider the Hermit card very closely aligned to the High Priestess, actually, because both of them are consumed with their communion with the higher power and eschew the company of the general public. So the Hierophant, for example, is a religious leader and acts as that intermediary between the higher power and the public at large. And sometimes the hermit comes down from the mountain and takes that role of hierophant. So that may be what is going to be expected of you in the future, Virgo. That you will move from this energy into a much more active role in other people's lives, not just shining this beacon and hoping that somebody sees it. And there's a certain amount of this hanged man energy to the energy of the hermit as well. That we're talking about this communion with the higher power here with the hanged man. We're talking about it here with the hermit. Not that you're going to be shutting yourself off from source or whoever your divine guides might be, but rather that you are going to return to somewhat normal activity, possibly, or be putting yourself around a group of people. One of my favorite books of all time, and some people contest as to how problematic Friedrich Nietzsche may or may not have been while alive. But I really do love his work, and one of my favorite books of all time is Thus Spake Zarathustra. And I very much relate that energy to the Hermit card. So the final outcome card. This is the future for you, Virgo, in this reading. And we have the Page of Wands in the upright. Now, hallmarks of the Page of Wands personality. Somebody who could be a fire sign. They could have both earth and fire energy in their chart because the pages are earth energy and they represent the manifestation on the physical plane of the divine when things are drawn down onto this plane. That is the energy of the pages of Malkuth, the kingdom. And also, as I mentioned in the Taurus reading, the 4 different worlds that are layered. These are things that are brought up in Kabbalah, but again, I just want to mention that there's a big difference between Golden Dawn Kabbalistic practices and real Kabbalah. So, and there's overlap. They're not mutually exclusive, but I just want to mention that here. Not to just think about these things in totally concrete terms like they're presented by Golden Dawn, because that's really going to shut you off from a lot of the esoteric knowledge presented when you study Kabbalah in a more total sense. So the Page of Wands, Earth of Fire energy, can be somebody who has both earth and fire in their chart. Can be somebody who's very young. The pages are fairly androgynous. So, and in some decks, the pages are actually called the princesses, but I'll leave that up to you as to how you like to delineate the gender of the cards. Somebody who's very enthusiastic, someone who has a lot of energy to put toward an endeavor, but might not necessarily have all of the expertise required in that field right off the bat. Very willing to learn, very eager to apply themselves to a pursuit, but not somebody who is super experienced in those things. So this could be you in the future situation, and especially if you are coming out of this hermit energy, Virgo. Notice that we have this wizened old man here who not only has the wand, but he also has a little bit of fire that he keeps in a cage. And the Page of Wands, the opposite end of that age spectrum, bearing a rod, but this time with these little green sprigs coming off of it. So there might be a renewal of some kind also. The ending of one cycle and the beginning of a new one for you, Virgo. And very related again to this wand energy. So we've got a lot of wands showing up in the earth sign readings this week. Very intriguing, very intriguing. So as I mentioned, one of my all-time favorite books is Thus Spake Zarathustra. And one of the scenes from that book is once he comes down from the mountaintop, he starts speaking these truths to the people. And in fact, Zarathustra does have more of this energy than he does this. Perhaps he is a wizened old man, but he finds himself in some very perplexing situations. Some things that even he does not know how to deal with. One of the first things that occurs when Zarathustra comes down from the mountain is that he finds himself in this town where there is a tightrope walker who has strung the tightrope up between these two buildings. Now, one side of this tightrope represents lower primates, non-human primates. The other side represents the ideal of the Superman. And regardless of your beliefs of that being co-opted by eugenicists, you can also choose to see the Superman as your own idealized version of the self. The best version that you can possibly be. Because we can also talk about these things in terms of the id, the ego, and the super ego, right? So this tightrope walker is carefully making his way across the tightrope, and he does lose his footing, and he falls to his death. And the square clears immediately, and Zarathustra is left. I think there's one other person there with him, with this person who has just fallen to their demise. And the task that Zarathustra takes on himself at that point is to carry that person's body back to his hometown for burial. And so he finds out where the tightrope walker is from, and he begins to carry this total stranger's body on his back to his hometown so that he can be properly buried according to his tradition. And Virgo, you've had quite a bit of time to contemplate, quite a bit of time to wait. I think as soon as you come down from the mountain, the potential for something very exciting to happen to you. Exciting, unpredictable, and hopefully much better than what befell the unfortunate tightrope walker. But remember, that is the peril when you go between these two worlds. The ego acts as a go-between between the id and the superego. The superego could also be thought of as one part of the subconscious. The part of the subconscious that deals with manifestation, while the id is very much the part of the conscious mind that deals with our desires and our impulses. And while we might not always be fully conscious of those thoughts, they do straddle that line quite precariously between conscious thought and the ego and the superego. But this is where the line snaps, tightrope walker. It's very important to understand not just the impulse control of these situations, but how one's desire for a result can block manifestation. So Virgo, that was a very interesting read for you today. I will be going over to the members side of the channel after this to do the crystal scrying, if that is of interest to you. But of course, your presence here on the channel is greatly appreciated, no matter what form it takes. So now we are going to address the sign of Capricorn. And Capricorn, if you would like to go ahead and set your intention for the reading. And allow any concerns that you have that you would like to address over the course of this reading. Allow those things to just kind of rise up to the forefront of your thoughts and wait there patiently. And Capricorn, if these are things that you find stressful, I invite you to go ahead and gently breathe through that energy. So you can inhale and draw in the divine white light of Source, and then exhale and release all of that tension, any stress, any anxiety that you wish to leave behind. And it will return to Source, and it will be transmuted. And I'll be done shuffling your cards soon, I promise. All right. I swear. Okay, here we go. Interesting. Very interesting reading for you this week, Capricorn. So let me write down your timestamp. We have all minor arcana for you this week. One reversal, and mostly pentacles and swords. And the card that is reversed is in the place of the significator, which is the current situation that you occupy, Capricorn. But let's go ahead and get started. So this is going to be in your past. And it is a card that's showing up upright. This could be you, depending on what energies you have surrounding you. It is the King of Wands. The King of Wands is somebody who leads through charisma. It's could be a fire sign person. It's air of fire energy. So it can be somebody who has air and fire in their chart. But it could also be somebody who is a master in the creative field. It could be an ad executive, famous musician, all those kinds of creative pursuits. Maybe even somebody who has their own art studio and art practice and regularly sells either their work or their concepts for sculptures. Somebody who's very successful, leads in creative endeavors. And this could be you, Capricorn. We have this little salamander down here. It used to be thought that salamanders actually came out of fire. Now, I suppose there are a few reasons why people might have thought that, but it's definitely not true. Salamanders come out of the water. We do see little sprigs of growth on this very active symbol for fire. So this is two active elements. There's a lot of mobility there with the air and the fire. But while the King of Swords, which would be air of air energy, is very rationally motivated. Oh, Maria, that's good to know. You have a lot of earth in your chart. The King of Wands is motivated by his passions, but is able to use his rational mind and his discernment to guide those passions in a productive way. So the next card that I have for you here, Capricorn, is also upright and in the past. So because this card is upright, it seems that this is a condition which carries into the current situation. You have a choice to make. This person is wearing a blindfold, and it is night, so it's a bit dark, and it's a little difficult, even if this person didn't have a blindfold on, because it is night, it might be too dark to see properly. They are holding two swords across their chest. Now, these are very large swords, and really, in order to wield the sword properly, you would want to put one of them down. But of course, that means that you have to make a choice. You have to decide which one of these swords do you prefer. and the way is unclear. We can see the water's very dark. It's a bit choppy. Oh, Jason, this is a plastic tarot deck. It doesn't really have a name. I did buy it off of Amazon, full disclosure, but I don't buy off of Amazon, but like maybe once a year. But I looked up PVC waterproof cards. And if I remember, I will put the link down in the description for the deck that I purchased. I'll add a note. And I'll add that link down in the description with the timestamps. Oh, it's not a problem. Thank you for asking, Jason. And I'm really glad that you're here. So the water's very dark. We do see some hazards out there, and we see that it's a bit choppy. Both of these swords are, for all intents and purposes, pretty much the same. But it could be two entirely different paths, both with a satisfactory outcome. We do know there will be some uncertainties along the way, and that there is the possibility that regardless of which path we choose, there could be some peril. And that is just how it goes with the Two of Swords. But you might have a binary choice like this facing you, Capricorn, that you are not yet ready to make. Maybe you kind of know which way you might decide, but you haven't fully decided yet. In the current situation, this is your only reversal in your reading this week, Capricorn. And it is the Knight of Pentacles. Now, this card is showing up in the reverse, which can indicate that either... Oh, that makes a lot of sense for that King of Wands then, for you particularly, Maria. Thank you for sharing that. So the Knight of Pentacles, this would be fire of earth energy. And when this card shows up in the reverse, it can mean that money is not coming in as quickly as you would like. It can also mean that more money is currently going out than is coming in, but that has the potential to change. So not that you will be depleting all of your funds, but rather this money is headed towards you, but it's moving so slowly that it might feel like you're losing ground. But this particular knight, he's a very grounded knight, of course, has his hands on the bridle. His horse is standing still. He's not in action. And he's not in a state of inaction. The terrain ahead of him is very flat. So overall, of all the knights, this is one of the less active knights. And of course, that is because of the passive energy of the pentacles, the earth energy. The Knight of Cups also is kind of just letting his horse wander around, right? But the Knight of Pentacles very much has a purpose. So do not lose hope if you're waiting for the money to come in. I will say that the next two cards that are your future placement cards, Capricorn, are a little bit more challenging. So we have this card of evaluation, the Seven of Pentacles. This farmer has put a lot of work into growing this crop. But he possibly thought that there was going to be a higher yield. Maybe these pentacles aren't very juicy. Maybe they're a little dry, taste a little bit like cardboard. And now he's kind of looking at them and wondering how he's going to offload this cardboardy produce at the market. How can I dress these up? What could I do to improve the flavor of my crops? You know, it's a little late in the game to be watering them more. You've already got this full grown yield of crops, and now you're evaluating this. And this very much goes with this Knight of Pentacles energy in the reverse, that you definitely, I can see at this time, Capricorn, that you potentially were looking for a much higher yield than what you got, and especially when it comes to material resources. So the Knight of Pentacles isn't strictly money, but it really does have to do with material resources. So that could also be something like a car, or having the kind of housing that you want. Because I don't see anything here about not having adequate housing. I'm sure that's possible as it's a general reading, but it doesn't look like there's housing insecurity here as much as the endeavor that was taken on has not yielded a sufficient result. Now, this could be part of this choice that you're making. This is a very established creative pursuit, such that you might have reached the pinnacle of what your success might be in this creative pursuit. And you might be able to make a fair amount of money doing it. Just to present a little bit about my own circumstances, I'm very happy with the growth that I've seen here on the YouTube channel. But I have now gotten another job because despite having a small business and being able to earn not a bad amount of income, not just through the channel, but through some other income streams, related things, that I have decided to take on another job just to fill in the gaps. So that might be the kind of questions you're asking yourself right now. And I don't bring that up to make the reading about me. I'm only giving examples of the kinds of things you could be contemplating at this time. So that might have to do with the choice that you're making. And this choice is more than just a binary choice, I think, in this case, too, because you might have two clear paths. It might be something like to be or not to be are your two paths, but there are a lot of other options that are tied up in this different criteria, different levels of involvement, different ways of presenting things that maybe you hadn't fully explored before. So that's going to be the evaluation process. Now, Capricorn, and I did hear Scorpio also. So a Scorpio might be involved, or you might have Scorpio in your chart. The final card for your reading, and this would be a future placement card, is the Nine of Swords. Now, this Nine of Swords is just purely about stress, just eating yourself up over having hung all of these beautiful swords above your bed. That's a choice too. But there's really, when you find the Nine of Swords coming out like this, the best thing that you can do is watch an ASMR video, because most of the time we're looking at a cycle, for one, that's about to come to an end regardless of your part in it. And for two, a lot of these things, there's really no point in stressing out about them. Now, I don't know how many of you were around for the Taurus reading, I think it was, when I talked about the symbolism of the white flowers and the red flowers in the tarot. But if you'll notice, this person's bedspread is covered with these little red flowers. And the white flowers represent the purity of the manifestation, the purity of intention. The red flowers can represent desire, can represent things like sex magic, right? And it's a dichotomy that shows up not just in the tarot, but sometimes you see it in alchemy, and you see it in geomancy with albus and rubeus, right? So you don't necessarily have to think of magic as being white or black or gray. You could think of magic as being white or red also. And in this case, we see that this person is sleeping under this bedspread covered in these red flowers. So they are allowing the desire of result to interfere with their ability to rest and care for themselves properly. And that is the weight that is hanging over their head with these swords here. The desire for comfort, the desire for control. I would say, especially in situations of a Capricorn nature, it might be a desire for control over one's outcomes. Feeling inadequate because this didn't materialize the way that you thought it would. But it really will help you very much, Capricorn, to quiet these voices as much as possible. You could think of this bedspread and all these little red flowers upon this bedspread as being all of the little nagging thoughts that are keeping this person awake at night. It's also important to realize that all of these swords hanging over the bed are of this person's design. They might not have been the one to hang the swords there, but they could certainly take those swords down if they decided to get a good night's sleep for once. There's a children's book called, I think it's something like East of the Sun and West of the Moon. And there was a story in that book. My father read that book a lot growing up, but we actually didn't have a copy of it until much later. So a lot of the stories that I know from that book are accounts from my father. So in an oral tradition, rather than having read the book myself or him having read the book to me, he had read it so many times that he could remember the stories by heart. And one of these stories is called Gudbrand on the Hillside. And there is a family in a house, and they are crying and crying and crying, so scared. And the protagonist comes over and says, "Why are you so scared?" And they had something like a horseshoe or an axe or something hanging above the door. And they were so afraid that this thing was going to fall down on one of them and kill them. And yet, none of them had done anything about it. Now, a contributing factor might have been, I think this family also had a sod house such that the cow was able to the roof. So there were a few things going on there, and they might have gotten to a point in their existence, Capricorn, where they lost perspective on what of these things were within their control. You can certainly try to fence cows out of certain areas. Maybe that works, maybe it doesn't. But you can certainly remove the axe from above your door. So your guided meditation today, Capricorn. I don't know how many of you knit or crochet. I do all kinds of little handicrafts like that. I've knitted myself sweaters and crocheted blankets and things like that. And today we are going to unravel an entire blanket. It is a blanket of your worries and concerns, Capricorn. And I know from experience that sometimes when I pull out so many stitches at once, everyone around me shrieks and begs me to stop. No, you've worked so hard. Don't do it. It's so beautiful. And yet, you see, in your mind's eye, the potential for so much more. And that is why it is important to be able to go through that process. And each one of these stitches that you pull out, Capricorn, represents one of these nagging thoughts that is occupying your mind and preventing you from properly resting. So I want you to take your knitting needles and just slide the work right off of them. And now we're going to hold one end of the string and gently pull. And you can wind the yarn around your hand and form it into a ball. And feel all of the little stitches pulling out of the piece of work. Are there any designs embedded in this blanket? Did you knit any designs into the blanket? Maybe you aren't even the person who knitted the blanket. Maybe somebody else knitted it for you. And while they probably had very good intentions at the time and reasons for doing so, it's time for you to undo all of the work that they did and feel no compunction about it. Gently pull out each stitch. And unwind the entire blanket. Now we only have a short segment of that blanket left. And from here, you may decide to put the needle back into the work and continue from there. But that's up to you, Capricorn. Thank you for joining me today. That is going to conclude the Earth sign tarot readings for this week. I am going to go now over to the members side of the channel and do the crystal scrying. I do hope that all of you have an excellent weekend, month. May is right around the corner. And you know what they say? It's gonna be May. excellent time in the year according to the Gregorian